Hello parents, thank you for being here with me, my friends, as we talk today about mindfulness of our thoughts, and in particular, the mindset that we hold as parents, and how it leads to certain behaviors that we exude, that we act on, that lead to specific results. And usually the mindset that we have as parents comes from the way that we were parented, a combination of the way that we were parented when we were kids, and cultural beliefs and conventional wisdom. And often as parents, those thoughts that we have, that mindset that we have, causes us to use certain actions and behaviors that lead us to yell, overreact, get big, use loud voices when our kids are off track. And this often adds tension to our kids' bodies, hearts, and minds, and adds to their emotional backpack that they're carrying around with them, making it harder for them to sit still in their bodies, making it harder for them to take in new information because they're managing this big emotional backpack behind them. So what's helpful is for us to mindfully, non-judgmentally, with compassion and care, look inward at the thoughts we're holding about our kids, especially when they're off track. So when we look at our thoughts in this way, we can be thinking about our parenting mindset. And often as we look gently inside there, we see that we're thinking about our kids as manipulative, emotionally manipulative. We're thinking of them as brats, or we're thinking of them as juvenile delinquents. We have lots of fear of them growing up and doing certain things, acting out in certain ways. And if we think of our kids that way, we'll be taking certain steps that will lead us to these results that we don't really want. We're going to flip our lid, we're going to yell at them, we're going to raise our voices, we're going to use our finger and point at them and use scary faces, and all of that is interference. All of that nonverbal, off-track behavior in us is interference for our kids. So instead, we can be taking steps, we can shift our mindset to take steps that will actually get us the results we want. And it all comes from the mindset shift. So shifting our mindset will help us take different steps than the ones we've been taking. That will lead us to results that we'd like, such as the ability for our kids to sit still in their bodies, to be calm and relaxed in their bodies so they can sit still in class and focus on the teacher because they're not having to be so distracted by this big emotional backpack. It will help them cooperate with us more because all kids really want to cooperate and please their parents and get positive attention from their parents if possible. And it will enable our kids to enjoy life more and to play more flexibly and easily with other kids and with us. So they'll be able to focus better and learn well, cooperate. So these are the results we want. We want to be effective in our discipline. We want to be effective in our limit setting. And to do that, it's important that we see our children as good, as doing the best they can, and as simply having emotions in their emotional backpack that they're needing to offload. And we can facilitate that. We can help them with that. So this comes from managing our own thoughts, educating ourselves. And I like to think about it as actually a software system, a software program. So as children, software programs were downloaded into our brains, unbeknownst to us, unconsciously. And most of us are just running those old software programs that are really outdated. Some of us 30 years old, 40 years old, 50 years old even. So it's helpful for us to get updated software, and that's what this is right now. Those of you who are listening are getting an updated software program that you can run. And you'll need to run it several times to work the kinks out, to refine it, to keep updating it. It's not going to work well the first time, but at least you have a new program that you can be using, new software you can be using. That's really key. So that's all mindset. Seeing our children as essentially good, seeing our children as wanting to cooperate, and something's in the way, and usually what's in the way is a lot of tension and emotion. So when we set a limit, we can think about setting limits in a way that helps to teach our children something. First of all, by modeling the kind of behavior we want them to exhibit when they're frustrated. When we're setting a limit, we're probably pretty frustrated because we're seeing off-track behavior and they're not listening, and we're needing to set a limit, and they're going to push up against that limit, and that's going to frustrate us. So the way that we manage our own frustration in those moments is teaching them something. And we're downloading computer software. We're downloading brain software systems into them as we feel ourselves rev up and manage ourselves. Feel ourselves rev up and manage ourselves. And you can see my shoulders kind of tightening and clenching as we rev up. And then as we regulate ourselves, you can see my shoulders going back and down and softening. So that's what happens. We feel, a little bit intense and tight and revved up, shoulders scrunching, face gripping, hands gripping. And then there's a softening, a releasing, a downward movement, down to the earth, connected, grounded, rooted, anchoring, when we can manage our emotions. So that teaches them something in and of itself. And then more direct teaching is by making sure that we've established a connection with our kids before setting a limit. So often I see parents yelling across the room or yelling across the field, "Stop doing that! Don't do that!" And what I see when I observe this is that these kinds of interventions are largely ineffective. Screaming from far away doesn't tend to work very well. The child usually continues the inappropriate behavior or the off-track behavior. So what Patty Whiffler encourages, and I love this piece of work in limit setting, is to stay calm. So first, soften ourselves. Instead of trying harder, try softer. And then bring the limit to the child. So put everything down and go over to the child and bring the limit to the child, not expecting them to honor our limit if we scream it from 20 feet away. It's our responsibility to bring the limit to the child, just like a police officer isn't going to be screaming, "Slow down," and that's going to be effective for us. The police officer comes to our car and brings the limit to us. They follow us in the car until we stop. So we as the parent need to follow our child until we can pull them over or pull them aside, and then we bring the limit to them. It's very effective. And when we bring the limit, it's helpful to first establish a connection. So one way to establish a connection is for the big old parent to come down to the child's level. So to kneel, get on the floor, come down to their level, bend down, make some eye contact, search for their eyes, maybe even put a hand on their shoulder or leg. So making a connection. And I think about this like a laptop computer that's trying to synchronize with its iPhone before making a connection, whether it's Wi-Fi or plugged in. The information that the big old computer has, the laptop has, is not going to get to the iPhone, no matter how hard it tries, no matter how loud it screams, unless there's first a connection established. And that connection will not be established from just screaming. That connection is established from coming close and making eye contact, hand contact, coming down to their level. So when we set limits, let's think about our bodies, not just their bodies and whatever they've done that's triggering us, but starting with ourselves, softening ourselves. Stay calm, come close, make a connection. CCC, calm, close, and connected. That's the best way to set limits effectively, in ways that will really enable our children to learn what it is we're trying to teach them about this limit in the moment. All of the other stuff, the loud voice, the facial expressions, the body postures, all of that is interference. It's noise in the system that's going to cloud the child's ability to take in the information we're trying to teach them. So another thing to know, when we stay this calm and come this close and make this much of a connection when we set a limit with a child who has a lot of emotion in their backpack, is we're creating a sense of safety for this child. They see us calm, they see us open, they see us connected, and all of that is saying, I'm a safe person for you right now. And children with emotional backpacks are seeking safety. You can imagine it like a big old full bladder, and whenever you have a big bladder, full of water, a bladder full of urine, the most urgent thing on your mind is looking for a safe place to go to the bathroom. And how, if we can't get to a toilet, then we're going to need to find some private tree somewhere in the woods. So the same is true for a child with a lot of emotion. They are scanning the environment for any semblance of safety. And if they don't find it, they're going to start leaking everywhere, all over the place, and in little driblets all the time. And that could be inattention and fidgety behavior, or that could be crying at the drop of the hat, weepy, whiny all the time. So these things are just signs that there's a big emotional backpack. And what can help is setting a limit calmly, because then it's like the waves in the ocean that have been going for miles and miles. There's this tension in those waves. And when those waves first start to brush up against this limit of the warm sand, then they come crashing open. So when we provide a limit, we can be sure that if there's any tension in our child's body, any emotional tension, it's going to come crashing out. So expect that when you stay calm, come close, offer connection, your child's going to have a really good healing cry, really good long cry. So Patty Whiffler from Hand in Hand Parenting says, limit, listen, limit, listen, limit. So what does that mean? That means set the limit and then expect that this child is going to fall apart emotionally and is going to have a good healing cry. And so we listen and we say things like, I'm here, you're safe, that's it, keep going. 2 or 3 word phrases only, not a lot of verbiage, not getting swept up in the content. Please avoid the content trap at all possibilities whenever possible. And so we're saying very little, probably about once every minute or so. That's a good goal to shoot for. It's hard to accomplish, but shoot for 1 2-word phrase every minute or so. So we're not getting swept up into the content trap. And then as the child starts to come out of those feelings a little bit, because it's really hard for children to be so in touch with these feelings, and our presence and our calmness and our closeness and our connection is going to put that child deeper in touch with these feelings they've been trying to avoid. That's been hard for them to feel, like a big emotional poop, a constipated poop that's hard and really, really unpleasant. It's painful when it comes out. So that's how emotional tension feels when it eventually starts to come out. It hurts. It hurts the child. So the child's going to want to move away from the parent, and the parent can come back and then start setting a limit about staying. Nope, I'm going to stay with you as long as you can manage your emotions as the parent. If you don't feel capable of managing your emotions and regulating your emotions, by all means, feel free to let the child take a break. You can take a self-time out. But most likely, the child will want to take space from you as you are staying calm, coming close, offering connection, and setting a loving limit. Very, very natural for the child to want to avoid being in contact with their big, unpleasant feelings. And as the child moves away, if you have it in you, you can follow the child slowly and move towards the child a little bit. Say, I'm going to stay. And the child can say, no, no, get away, get away. And their hurt might start coming out at you. And the hurt might start coming out in the form of hurtful words or hurtful language. And we can name this as the hurt coming out. And we can say, that's your hurt coming out, sweetie. Or we can just know it for ourselves. This is the child's hurt coming out. This child doesn't, really feel this way about me. The child's in the red zone, so to speak. They flipped their lids, and this is the hurt coming out at me because I'm staying and I'm setting a limit. It's their wave crashing. So that's the mindset piece. This is not a child who really hates me, which would cause us to get mad at the child. If we use the mindset, if we hold the mindset, this is a child that has a lot of hurt, a lot of emotional tension, and it's coming out. And what I need to do, the steps I need to take, is to stay calm and see this as hurt and name it as hurt, or just know that it's hurt. That will enable me to stay calm, which will actually help all of this hurt come out. So the child is less likely to think these things about me or say these things in regular old moments. And over time, we'll say them much, much, much less, as long as we can help clear the child of this hurt. So that's back to our thoughts, being mindful of the thoughts we're thinking. That might lead us to our own off-track behavior, which will be largely unhelpful. And shifting our thoughts to really, discipline ourselves to come back to seeing this child as hurting, as having emotional tension that needs help. They need our help so they can offload their emotional tension, so they can be cooperative and relaxed in their bodies again. So I really love a model from Susan Stifelman, and she uses a model of the grief cycle. And here I've written out some of the steps in the grief cycle. So when we set a limit, we are essentially beginning a grief cycle for our children. And they will start feeling these very unpleasant experiences that are very tight. They come from a tight, tense place, and that's why they're in red. I call this the red zone. And when I say the red zone, it's non-judgmental. It's just, kind of the heat zone. It's a hot place. It's a tense, hot, tight place. And so it consists of denial, anger, and bargaining. And Susan Stifelman talks about this as the DAB, the DAB, the denial, anger, bargaining space. And what happens for most of us as parents in our more conventional wisdom is that we shut kids down at this point. So we send them to their rooms, we tell them they're being naughty, we shame them, we punish them, we shut them down. And they're not able to get to a place where they're able to fully process their anger, which would lead to the next kind of stage of the grief cycle, which is a little bit of a mini depression or a depressed mood, a sweet weepiness, and a deep, true acceptance. So when we send them to their rooms, or we yell at them, or we have tense, tight bodies ourselves, it keeps them in the DAB. It keeps them in this place of denial, anger, and bargaining. It keeps them in off-track behavior. They're going to continue to act out. They're going to continue to call their siblings stupid. They're going to continue to nudge kids or scream in their faces or scream at us all the time in offhanded moments. So what we can do is think about helping our child move out of the DAB, and they really need our presence, our help to move out of the DAB. So staying calm, coming close, offering connection, letting them know without words, I'm on your side here. I see what's going on. You don't know what's going on. Of course you don't know what's going on. I see what's going on. You have this big emotional backpack. You have a lot of emotional tension, and I'm here to help. I'm a facilitator. I'm going to facilitate your offloading in this red zone. I'm going to stay here with you until you feel better, really deeply better. Patty Whiffler talks about this experience as though a child is in a cabin all by themselves without a door. And there's just little windows. And we, the parent, it's like we're sitting outside the window saying, I'm here, I'm going to stay, I'm not going to leave you all alone here. I'll stay until you feel better. And eventually, as the child, shakes and kicks and screams and works these feelings through their body, our bodies are a tremendous resource for processing emotion. We're just on the brink of really getting a better understanding of how useful the body is in processing big, overwhelming feelings. So the child will kick and scream, and the parent is looking in through the window saying, I'm here, you're safe, keep going. Emotional coaching, giving the child emotional coaching, all the while having a non-judgmental attitude, which they can internalize over time, which will benefit them their whole entire lives as they relate to their own emotions in non-judgmental ways. And in regulated ways, because we're modeling regulation, we're modeling staying emotionally regulated. So as we stay there, what happens as the child works all of these emotions through is that the cabin walls, Patty Whiffler says, the cabin walls start to crumble. And then there's just this opening. And then there's the sweet depression, the sweet little depressed moods phase, where the child will usually nuzzle up into us and cry a little bit, maybe for a few seconds. It's usually not very long. And then move into a place of acceptance. I like to do a little litmus test after the denial, anger, bargaining phase is over and the child's moved into a little weepy depression, and after they just nuzzle a little bit, I can say, oh, let me see those sweet little eyes. There you are. I'm pouring love right in. Because there's not those walls of defense anymore, the child has come into contact with their feelings that they've been trying to avoid and processed them and worked them through. They're undefended, they're raw, they're deeply open, so our love can go very far in ways that our love can't go in when those defensive walls are up. So you can pour love in, and if the child can't meet your eyes, then that's just a sign there might be a little bit more there. You can come back to the limit, or just know that there's more that needs to be processed next time. And then you can just feel the love and the acceptance, and then usually the child at that point, if you've really gone through the whole big wave of emotion, you've really worked the whole grief cycle around this limit. So usually at that point the child is perfectly accepting of whatever limit you had set initially. And they can either go off and play really well, really flexibly honoring that limit, or they can usually have a really good deep sleep. Some of them will just go right to sleep after that. So this is the process that can unfold, a therapeutic process that helps the child clear their emotional backpacks, their emotional tension, so they can be cooperative, think well, learn well, show on-track behavior. And that's how we become effective disciplinarians. It all starts from our mindset. So I really encourage you to practice being mindful of the thoughts you're thinking about your children. And if you notice that you're thinking, this manipulative brat, just notice that non-judgmentally. Like, judgment. Or, I'm using the words manipulative brat. Isn't that interesting? And then you can name it very simply unhelpful. It's like helpful thoughts and unhelpful thoughts. So there's unhelpful thoughts that are the judgmental thoughts about our kids. And then there's helpful thoughts, which are the non-judgmental thoughts about our kids. So helpful thoughts are off track, and they have emotional tension, full emotional backpack, they need help offloading. Those are all helpful thoughts that we can be thinking. Or we can notice the unhelpful thoughts we're thinking, manipulative, brat, juvenile delinquent, and the list can go on. I don't typically think these things about my own child, so I don't have a lot of them in my mind, but I know they're very, very common. So it's just helpful to Notice them. Ah, judging. Ah, unhelpful thought about my child. And then just discipline ourselves to choose non-judgmental thoughts about our children that will lead us to the results we really want for ourselves and our children. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being a dedicated parent and for practicing mindful parenting every day. It truly makes a difference in the lives of our children.